Ma'am, I fully acknowledge the investment this committee has made in shipbuilding, and the challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that by
Please,
not
I don't.
properly.
I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You could talk percentages. You can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide
Then
them
let's
for you.
have them before we, and my hope is that we could get to it before we go to a markup within a few hours here today.
Something else happened this weekend, and it needs to be addressed, and that is the President's premature and escalatory decision to deploy not only the National Guard troops to Los Angeles, but active duty Marines as well. Mr. Secretary, we're both from Minnesota. I was in the Twin Cities during the riots that followed the murder of George Floyd. Tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets for days. Governor Walz made the decision to call up the Minnesota National Guard. At no point did we need the citizens of Minnesota request that the Marines be deployed. Our state and local law enforcement, along with our National Guard, who have worked on crowd control, they were more than enough. They were more than capable of handling this situation. History has proven that law enforcement and the National Guard are more than capable of handling situations more volatile than what happened this weekend. We all see the continuous loops on TV, but this looks nothing like the George Floyd protests or the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles in 1992. Mr. Secretary, this is a deeply unfair position to put our Marines in. Their service should be honored. It should not be exploited. What is the current cost for what is taking place in California, and how is it going to affect this budget?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground. And because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed,
If the Secretary's not
so we
going
helped.
to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
For budgetary, if he needs to get back to the committee with the numbers, I'd appreciate it both current and present.
Happy to submit them for the record.
I know you believe that submarines are important, as I do, but getting the specific information about where we stand, what the production rate is, what gaps there may be. We're willing to listen to all of that because, in fact, in contrast to what your earlier statement was, we have, in fact, supported mightily the submarine industrial base from this committee. That's not been neglected. Do you have a plan for making the investments necessary to ramp up submarine production to the necessary elections? I would just tell you, as part of the December continuing resolution, Congress included $5.7 billion for the department to put on contract for 2 additional Block 4 and 1 Block 5 Virginia-class submarines. The Navy advised members that these funds were required to be placed on contract by February of 2025, yet the department did not put funding for the 2 additional Block 4 boats on contract until April 30th. So do we have a plan, do you have a plan for making the necessary investments to ramp up submarine production to the necessary levels? And what is that plan?
Ma'am, first of all, I want to thank this committee for the flexibility alongside FY25 and the continued resolution.
Well, I would hope you would thank this committee for the
a lot of
funding
flexibility
that it
provided
had
on the
made.
submarine
We
industrial
have made a
base, and we
serious
appreciate that.
investment. So your first statement is inaccurate. We have focused squarely on submarines, and we're now want to know where that is going and what your plan is for the continued advancements to meet production levels and make sure that that is an area that's covered for our national security.
Ma'am, I fully acknowledge the investment this committee has made in shipbuilding, and the challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that by
Please,
not
I
investing
don't.
properly.
I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You could talk percentages, you can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide
Then
them
let's
for you.
have them before we, and my hope is that we could get to it before we go to a markup within a few hours here today. I yield back my time, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady yields back her time.